I'll tell you, my career is probably the most honored that I've been to introduce someone and bring them on stage and share them with you and help educate you. But before we get started, I just want to let you know a couple of things. That have a bunch of questions about this. Our next keynote will not be available after the presentation, but he will be in the exhibit hall where you can meet with him today. So I suggest you all go to the exhibit hall and spend as much time as you can in the hall today, and hopefully you will be able to spend some time with him and maybe exchange business cards, talk with him for a little bit. I also not only want to thank the sponsors and all of you for being here, but also ANPI, who helped sponsor the Woz keynote. And I want to remind you all to stop by the ANPI booth in the hall and pick up a pair of sunglasses. The hall's going to be open from 11 to 5 today, and at 4:45, I will be giving away a Jeep to somebody. Brand new Jeep, black Jeep, back on. So I hope one of you wins it. You just have to fill out a little card, get it stamped, and hand it in, and you're going to have a shot at winning the Jeep. So I had a very long bio that I was going to read on our next keynoter, but I think the best way to introduce him is, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage a man who needs no further introduction, the Woz.
So electronics is often something you do alone at first and on your own. It's not like you have a lot of courses in school, but you read books, you have heroes in the science fiction world, you've got stories about kids that run their own companies and solve the world problems in a laboratory, and you hear about these famous scientists. And the funny thing is, if you're good at math and you're good at science and these things, you always value what you are good at. So if you just happen to luck out and meet the girls on flashcard in 3rd grade, you start thinking, I'm a mathematician, I'm going to do things that have to do with math. And that's a good, head towards engineering. My father was an engineer, and I was going to be an engineer when I grew up. And I told him that. And I was going to be a school teacher second of 5th graders. That's just where my values fell. The teachers were important to guide us into being able to have good jobs and make an income and own a house and have a family and all those great things in life. So it was, it's engineers. Basically, their role is to create great appliances that make our life at home easier. I thought that when I was young. I still think it to this day that that's the main role. But all the great things in the world, buildings and bridges and all that, are really created by people that design them. And they have to use mathematical techniques to know the right materials and how to build them, and also how to improve those materials. It's often done down at the science level. When young, I had a lot of science fair projects that when I look back, they were immense. They were huge for a young kid to build. Numbers of parts, physical size, amount of hours, drilling holes, 100 holes for lights and hundreds of switches and that sort of stuff. Big projects. I didn't realize it at the time. It was fun. It was understandable. If you learn one simple little concept, a switch, a logic gate, a transistor, then you can apply that method 100 times and get something very big and valuable out of it. But it's like, it seems kind of like a small thing once you've learned it once. I was definitely a prodigy. I was winning awards for electronics projects in 8th grade, beating out the 12th graders in science fairs. I discovered logic by accident. Logic was a part of the world. It was digital. I've been an analog engineer. I was a young kid, 6th grade, I had my ham radio license. But I discovered this digital world. There were no books, there were no ways to run into them. Accidental discovery. If I hadn't found one journal in our hallway, I wouldn't be here before you to this day. And it talked about logic, little devices. Logic makes decisions. It makes decisions like a switch on the wall to turn a light on. It makes decisions like playing games, like adding and subtracting numbers. And then eventually, I learned transistors, how electrons float in transistors to make logic out of real physical wires and things. Really did stuff. This was interesting. To have a life as a kid, to have a hobby where you can actually build devices that do things, that just turn on lights or add numbers or play the game of tic-tac-toe. So one of my huge projects in 6th grade was to build with hundreds of transistors and diodes and resistors, hundreds of other logic gates that could play every single move in tic-tac-toe and never lose. And I remember as a young kid sitting on paper for 2 days playing every single game of tic-tac-toe you could possibly play, numbering the squares 1 to 9, and then coming up with my design. So very hard work on large projects was unusual in those days. Normally all you got was the normal school projects for most kids. I didn't get recognized by others. Nobody else did this electronics thing in my school. We had a few electronics kids on my block, a few electronics kids who had engineers as parents, and that leads us into it. So we'd come up with our own ideas. We'd run wires down the fences and set up house-to-house air cons. We didn't copy anybody's circuit. We just bought some parts that we thought would work and put them together with some batteries. And sure enough, we had carbon microphones, little speakers, so we could wake each other up at 2 in the morning and sneak out our windows and go toilet paper houses. Electronics was a lot of fun. Because we did these unusual things on our own. When you do something on your own, it's personal. It's you. It's your life. It's not like you're building a project you read about in a book. At high school, I was so good at electronics. My electronics teacher set me down to program a computer. And one of the first programs I ran, it was a chess problem. Didn't get an answer. And then I figured out it was going to take 10 to the 25th years to solve this little chess problem called the Knights Tour. And I know that human beings have figured out how to solve it. What that taught me is a computer that can do 1 million things a second, 1 billion things a trillion, it doesn't matter how fast the computer is. The methods to solve the problems of the world are what make them solvable, and that only comes out of the human mind. The human brain has the intuition to figure out how to solve a problem. Computers aren't there yet, and I believe all my life they'll never get there, but I have changed my mind in the last few years. I'll get to that near the end. So I discovered a manual scribing computer in high school, and we didn't have them in our school. We didn't have computers in schools. I discovered the manual down at the company where I was allowed to program. And I thought, my gosh, at the elementary school, all my logic gates that made decisions, could I figure out how to combine on paper a bunch of logic gates to make this computer I read about? It was the PDPA for digital equipment. And it took me quite a few months to finally get to where, yes, I could actually design a computer. I was sure of it. And not very good. And then I started getting every little manual of all the mini computers of the late 1960s. And every single computer, I would sit down for a weekend. 2 days, I'd close my door. 2 days, I'd use the newest chip manuals that had 2 bits on a chip instead of 1 bit, or 4 bits instead of 2. The newest chips, and I would design the computers over and over and over. And I challenged myself. Can I do it? Design it with fewer parts. I could never afford to buy a single chip, but I could take the time to design it. I loved it. It was a hobby. It wasn't anything I ever thought I'd do as a job. When I was an engineer later in life, I was going to be doing things engineers do. Televisions and radios. I mean, computers, the only thing I knew about computers were they were in places like called research or something. You know, some strange places didn't make sense to me as a student. But I got so good, I got to where I could design any computer in the world in 2 days. And I had a repertoire of tricks to save parts because I kept challenging myself. I was competing with myself and not with other people. If I'd been given a grade for designing a computer, I would have moved on, done something different. I'm done. I finished this course. I would have thought I'm done. If I had gotten paid a salary for doing it, I'd just move on to the next project. But this was something I did for about 2 years straight, designing over and over. And the tricks I came up with, I'm holding ones and zeros in my head, and what if I pretend that this is a 1 to 0? And I got 3 dates, and if I combine a man date and a choose a word date, my gosh, they were free, and I had them available available on some of the chips, but I wouldn't have had an inverter and an exclusive board instead. So I did everything I could to save parts. And people would look over and say, wait a minute, why are you using a register that stores a 1 to 0? And I said, no. I have it wired in a tricky way that inverts a 0 to a 1 and a 1 to a 0. All these tricks and using parts in ways they weren't intended, but it was to I don't know, have the fewest number of parts in my design that was possible. And I knew that was really good. But I didn't think I didn't do it as a job. Went off to college and introduction to computers, graduate level course. I took it because I was in engineering. I got an A+, and I ran every program I could think of. I ran our class 5 times over budget. See, I didn't know they had a budget. I didn't know that money. And a supercomputer in 1968 cost a lot of money. And, oh my gosh, they were talking about I might have to pay myself more than hours in tuition to go back the next year to that wonderful college in the Rocky Mountains in the snow. And I was scared. But while I was there, I did something fun with electronics. Went down to Radio Shack, bought their high-speed transistor of the day, wound a little coil myself, and built a little transmitting device, a radio transmitter. I mean, I built receivers and transmitters, kits for my ham radio life anyway. And I went to the one color TV on campus. It was in a dorm, a girls' dorm down in a basement. Everybody would go there